Hi everyone, Catherine here with Daryl, and we're going to be talking about structure and creativity, two topics that sometimes might not seem to go together. Daryl, you've told me a great story about children and structure, something to do with a fence, I think?
Yeah, that's right. There was a small study done, and they had a class of students that they took to two different playgrounds at two different times.
Okay.
The one playground had a fence, and the other playground did not. So they took the students to the playground without a fence, and they observed how much of the territory did they use, where did they go, and so on, and they kept track of it. And they found that they used a certain amount of territory. When they took them to the other playground with the fence, we might have expected that it would confine the students.
Right.
But just the opposite happened. The students who were on the playground with the fence used the entire area within the fence. The students on the playground without the fence stayed a little closer together. It's almost like they were fearful of the boundaries. And it was almost a type of paradox of structure that would be keeping them in.
There's a concept that we call the paradox of structure. Michael Curtin is the one who introduced it, and it says that any structure is both enabling, in other words helpful,
Right.
and limiting at the same time. And it applies to any kind of structure at all. So the fence was a physical structure.
Yes.
But I could have a social structure like my family or a team. I could have a mental structure, an idea, a plan. Can you
Even
think
a budget or a schedule or any of these things are
Right.
structures of various sorts.
and systems and governments and languages.
yes.
They're all different structures. And so the idea is that when you have a structure and you're problem solving, you're trying to figure out what's just the right amount of structure that will be useful without limiting you too much.
Right.
And what's interesting is that if you remember our creative diversity model, people see structure differently.
Yes.
Right? So you have people who prefer more of it and people who prefer less of it.
That's right.
So if you think of one of those examples of a structure, like a team or like the rules in an organization of how you're supposed to behave, people who are more structured thinkers will make use of that structure.
Yes.
They find it enabling. They see it as more helpful than the people who are the less structured, who will tend to try to shed it. So you get two people with different creative styles looking at the same structure and seeing it very, very differently.
And one way to navigate that difference is if you could have the structure, have your fence, but put gates in it. Have a way to go to the next level in a safe way so that you could return back.
And when you build those fences, it's as if you're giving yourself some flexibility, so the structure doesn't become too rigid, and yet at the same time you have that safety, so you know where you can go. I think one great exercise for all of us and for the students here would be to pick a structure. It could be a social structure like your family or your team that you work with, or it could be the rules or the regulations in your city or in your organization. And it might be fun to do this with a partner. Look at that structure and think about all the things that are enabling about it, all the things that are helpful.
And all the things that are limiting.
All the things that are limiting, and compare your views. And by doing that, you're going to get a sense of how you think differently about structures. And that will help you in your collaboration with that person to understand a little bit more, how do they view structure differently than I do.